Hello again. I'm Chris Lee of Southeastern 16 here to react live to probably the most stunning upset in SEC football this season. Kentucky has gone on the road, and I think this was Ole Miss's homecoming, and beaten Ole Miss 20-17. A game that's going to have massive playoff ramifications for Ole Miss. Maybe going to have some ramifications for Mark Stoops. But most of all, Kentucky pulled probably behind, as far as I can remember, Northern Illinois' upset of Notre Dame in South Bend a couple of weeks ago. I can't think of a game that maybe surprised me more than this one. I came in the game saying that you got to have an offense to win in college football these days, and I just didn't know if Kentucky had it. But you know what? Kentucky's got defense. We knew that coming in, and boy, defenses ruled the day today. All right, we'll let people get in here for just a minute. Kentucky has gone on the road and pulled a 20-17 stunner of Ole Miss. I think Kentucky was about a 17-point underdog. I'm not sure what the line was at kickoff. If you're in the chat, let me know. But boy, I would have to think it's going to be a long night in Oxford because Ole Miss had an easier schedule than most teams in the SEC that are in playoff contention. We just kind of assumed they'd beat Kentucky, especially after Kentucky, the way it looked against South Carolina, the way it couldn't score against Georgia. But you know what? Go back and look at that Georgia game. That might have been a little bit of a harbinger of things to come. We were fretting a little bit about Kentucky's offense, but hey, they were playing Georgia's defense. But in the meantime, when you hold Georgia to, what was it, 14 points? We said coming into the year, I thought Kentucky had a top 5 defense in the SEC. Some people laughed at me, but you look at the personnel. Deion Walker, Octavius Oxendine up front. You got J.J. Weaver, De'Aaron Jackson coming off the edges, and you got Max Hairston as your corner, one of your corners, maybe the one that's 2-3 corners in the league. And by the way, he didn't even play today. How about that? Like when I heard Max Hairston was out, my first reaction was Kentucky's got no chance because you just got too many guys to cover. You got Trey Harris, you got Priest Corner, you got Juice Wells, you got Jordan Watkins. Henry Parrish can do some things out of the backfield. Now, Harris, I think, was playing on a banged-up ankle. So, to be fair, Ole Miss had an injury issue or two there too. But my goodness, who thought Kentucky was going to come into Ole Miss and do this? If you did, let me know, because I didn't see it coming. I just thought that Ole Miss has just got too many things to cover. And the minute I heard Hairston was out, I'm like, there's just no way. But you know what? I thought Kentucky's secondary today was tremendous. There were not a lot of big windows for Jackson Dart. There were some times that Dart had some guys that if he leads them a little bit more with this throw down field, maybe he gets a catch. So I think Jackson Dart was a little bit off today. A couple times he hit onto the ball a little bit too long. So it wasn't vintage Jackson Dart, but give credit to Kentucky. The throwing windows just weren't there for the most part. I thought their defensive line was tremendous. I don't know that anybody had Kentucky, going toe-to-toe with Ole Miss in terms of total offense. Ole Miss outgained it by 15. But here's the key stat. And you go back and we watch this in our video. Kentucky's defense has been on the field under 50 snaps a game on average. That's really, really hard to do. And I know that they lost, 40% of that Southern Miss game. And that inflates the stats just a little bit. I get that. But this is an offense in Ole Miss that's on the field, 75, 80 plays a game. And Kentucky's offense just hadn't been good for the most part. So for the defense to be off the field that much and forcing that many 3-and-outs told you a lot about how good Kentucky's defense was. 22 first downs today. 38 minutes and 48 seconds time of possession. If you want to know the key stats of this game, right there, that's it. Anyway, we'll take your comments, your questions, all that stuff as we react to Kentucky's monumental upset of Ole Miss in Oxford. And somebody says the line, I guess, by kickoff had gotten down to 15.5, which is really weird. For it to go from 17.5 to 15.5 with Hairston out, I don't know what somebody knew there. I guess somebody knew something because this game, and that's the thing too. This game was toe to toe almost from the jump. And maybe we should have known Ole Miss was off a little bit when they just about fumbled away the opening kickoff. I think that on replay, I can't remember if that was overturned or what the deal was. I guess they reviewed it, but Ole Miss retained possession, but just didn't do anything. I think Ole Miss had the ball 8 minutes in the first half. That says a lot about Kentucky's defense. Anybody doesn't think that's a top 5 unit in the SEC now, I'm here to argue with you on that. I mean, I don't know whose defense you would take right now over theirs. I mean, you would take Georgia's. I think Tennessee is in that conversation. I need to see Tennessee play somebody a little bit better. I think that's another thing we learned today is it's hard to know how good a team is until it plays somebody. And Ole Miss had played nobody. I mean, who's the best team Ole Miss had played so far? Wake Forest on the road? I guess. I mean, I guess they're better than Georgia Southern. Kentucky, at least had been tested by Georgia, had been tested by South Carolina. And sometimes it's those games that really get you prepared for these big showdowns. And boy, Mark Stoops in Kentucky came to play today. Hats off to those guys. All right, I'll get into some observations on the game in just a minute. Reminder, we are brought to you by BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff. Get in on our $200,000 mega contest. Pick 5 games against a spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino. Get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one over 150 slots games. Head to the website today. Get in on all the action. Bet online. The game starts here. All right. Really interesting last 5 minutes in this game. I thought Kentucky called a very conservative game today. And that's probably the right way to approach it. Ole Miss can get after your quarterback. Ole Miss can force turnovers. Kentucky just had not moved the ball well all year. And there really weren't a lot of big shots taken downfield. So I feel like Kentucky just kind of hung around. And you're just thinking, I don't know. I know they got some weapons. They got Barry and Brown. They got Dane Key. They got a bunch of guys that can make plays, but they hadn't done it so far. And the big play of the game, if you didn't see it, Kentucky's got the ball, I think 4th and 7 inside their own 30. And I'm just thinking, your defense is really controlled Ole Miss, hadn't let a lot of stuff go. Mark Stoops is a guy that is a defense-first guy. I thought he would trust his defense and punt the ball away and just get a stop and get the ball back. I was shocked when they went for it. 4th and 7, I think on their own, 22, 23. Somebody can tell me in the chat where the ball was exactly. He dials up a play. I think he gets single coverage, and he found Barry and Brown open down the left side line. Did Brock Vandagriff for a big gain. It was 63 yards, put them in scoring position, and got, I think, the Ole Miss is 20. That was the play of the game. I don't think anybody saw that coming. I don't know that Kentucky, and I didn't see every play. I saw most of them. Occasionally there's a kitchen run or something that takes your eyes off the TV, but I don't know that Kentucky really took many shots downfield. Again, very, very, very conservative game plan. And then he hit Brown, and Brown is a guy, probably the biggest playmaker on that team, with apologies to Dane Key. They're probably 1A and 1B. Jamore Macklin's pretty good too. But Brock Vandagriff just threw a dart on that. And that set him up. They get the run. Gosh, I can't remember what down it was, but they get a run. They fumble it away, and then Josh Caddis jumps on it in the end zone for what would end up being the winning points. Now, Ole Miss made it interesting. 4th and 7 for Ole Miss, I think it was, and Dart hit Priestcorn for about 41. But then Jackson Dart just made some really, really questionable decisions. Held on the ball too long once or twice. They got a free play when, I can't remember if it was, I think it was Deion Walker was offsides. And instead of taking the shot downfield, I guess he didn't have anything open because he rolled out and was looking downfield a while, but just ran it, fumbled it away, didn't count because of the offsides. But yeah, I mean, and I was a little shocked too. that they just couldn't get big yards on first downs there late and second downs. They were set up for third and long, and then they had that Caden Davis field goal. Caden Davis really hadn't been in that spot. I think they said he'd had like one field goal attempt in his career. That was when he was at another school in that spot where I think 5 minutes left in a close game, and he'd missed that one, and he pulled this one way to the left. And by that point, there was under a minute left. Ole Miss had one timeout, nothing else they could do. But, man, hats off to Mark Stoops in Kentucky. Because I think now you reset expectations for your season. You got a week off. You got winnable games coming up. Vandy at Florida Auburn. Kentucky going to be favored in all those games. I don't know about by double digits. Probably not by double digits, except maybe Vandy. They'll be favored double digits against Vandy, I think. Although I believe Vanderbilt won last time it was up there. So there's that. And then you got at Tennessee, but then you end with Murray State at Texas, Louisville. So all of a sudden you're Kentucky. You got a shot to win, I don't know, 8 games. Good luck with Texas. Louisville's going to be tough, but if you win that, you've maybe knocked, who knows, maybe you've knocked Louisville out of the playoff. That's like 5 wins if you're Kentucky. So I think this resets their whole season. I think you look back at that South Carolina game, and that just may be a bad matchup. I don't know. Carolina, that's been a weird series where Carolina just kind of owned them, and they couldn't stop Lenore Sells. They couldn't do anything that day against a team with the pass rush. But hey, hats off to them. You know what? I really want to see that game against Tennessee. Tennessee's going to be favored. That's in Knoxville, but Kentucky just went on the road. Came out ahead of Ole Miss, and it's the same type of offense, right? It's a fast tempo, quarterback makes your plays. They run it a little bit more than they throw it. And I'm interested. I don't think Kentucky's going to beat Tennessee, but if I'm Tennessee, I'm looking at that game, I'm going, hey, it may not be the pushover we thought it was a couple weeks ago today. So looking at the stat sheet, again, the thing that I think that stands out, time of possession. When you go 2-1 on Ole Miss in time of possession, that's a big thing. For Ole Miss, 2 penalties. They just continue to play sloppy ball. We probably should have talked about that a little bit more coming in. 8 penalties for 53 yards. Didn't run the ball today. I know Parrish was hurt. I don't know if it was his foot or his ankle. Hey, Kentucky didn't run the ball either. I thought Ole Miss's defensive line played really well. Really well. But not as well as Kentucky's. Let me see how many sacks they got today. It was a few. And again, this is a team that can get after you off the edge with Jackson and Weaver. You can get pressure with your guys up front. Okay, ESPN's not showing defensive stats yet, but in any case, I thought Kentucky's ability to cover in the back and really didn't give Ole Miss anything easy. Like even the biggest play of the game, probably the biggest play of the game for Ole Miss, and this is when I thought Ole Miss had it, and Ole Miss probably thought it had it too, was when Dart hits Trey Harris with the throw, I don't know, around the Kentucky 40, and he just did Trey Harris things. He outruns safeties, linebackers, corners. He had 3 guys to beat, and he didn't really have the angle on any of them, and he won a foot race to the end zone, and that's why Trey Harris is a special player. But other than that, and other than the desperation throw to Priestcorn, Ole Miss just didn't have it today. And I'm sure if you're an Ole Miss fan tonight, you are very upset. You're criticizing Lane Kiffin. You're criticizing Jackson Dart. You're probably criticizing your offensive line. And that was a little bit of a disappointment, to be honest. That was where I had a question about Ole Miss coming into the year. I just didn't know. And, yeah, they're experienced, but you didn't have, like, All-American candidates tackle to tackle. And that, I think, is what allowed Kentucky to really match up, because it's got Deion Walker. It's got some guys that you just don't see very often. And I think that's a story. Defense beat offense today. Thanks to Pat Turnbow, 4 sacks for Dart. That's about what I would have thought. Let's see what else we got in the comments here. Lane Kiffin's a fraud. I knew that was going to happen. I knew we'd hear the start of that. Well, what do you do if you're Ole Miss now? you got to go to South Carolina next week. That's not easy. That's a team that can get after you up front the way Kentucky did. You got a safety in Nick Emanwuri who can cover on the back end. You got to win that one. You got to go to LSU the next week. Man, they started with 4 out of 5 at home. Then you got an off week. You got a tough Oklahoma defense. You go to Arkansas. You got Georgia. Ole Miss has got its work cut out to make the playoff. Because now you've got to pick one up. You can lose to Georgia, but you can't lose any other ones. And frankly, I don't know if 10-2 gets you in at this point. It probably does. We'll have to wait and see how everybody else does. But what do you do with you got a team like a 9-3 Georgia? And I guess the question on that one would be head to head. Georgia wins. The 9-3 Georgia's going to get in over a 10-2 Ole Miss because of schedule, I think. But yeah, I mean, big dent in Ole Miss's playoff hopes. Now, I don't know, outside of the Georgia game, and I'm looking off to the right side of my screen here to look at the schedule. Yeah, I don't know that they'll be an underdog again, except for the Georgia game. I don't know. At LSU, I want to see what LSU does the next couple of weeks. Defensively, I just don't think they can get stops. I do think Ole Miss will bounce back. I don't think the season's over, but that's a stunner. When you're a 15.5-point favorite and you're a playoff contender, you don't lose that kind of game. And you really don't lose it at home. And I'm sure that's going to be held against Ole Miss. Plenty of time to get the season right. You go 10-2, you make the playoff. I think it's all forgiven at the end of the year. But your margin error is gone. You've either got to beat Georgia to make up for it, or you cannot lose again besides that one. If you're Kentucky, wins left on the schedule potentially. Okay, Kentucky comes out of this one today at what? 3-2. You got an off week. Vandy, you'll be favored there. That could be 4-2 at Florida. Winnable game. Potential to go 5-2. Auburn at home. Potential to go 6-2 at Tennessee. That's going to be tough. Don't think they'll win. But again, based on the way Kentucky matched up today with Ole Miss, I think that Tennessee game becomes super interesting. I just want to see if Kentucky can grind Tennessee's gears the way it did Ole Miss's today. Then you got an off week. You got the mercy killing of Murray State. You go to Texas. Good luck there, and then Louisville. Okay, if you go 8-4 and you're Kentucky at this point, presuming you lose to Texas, and then presuming you lose to Tennessee, but you beat Louisville, that's a good year. You say, hey, we're 8-4, and one of those was a 1-point loss to Georgia, which Georgia hadn't lost an SEC regular season game in forever. That's a success. Dealing with Dylan says that the South Carolina game was an outlier. True Kentucky fans knew the defense was legit. We've been watching for 5 years. Hey, Dylan, I said this before the season too, and you can go find it. I don't remember. It's in one of our weekly shows, and we were naming top 5 defenses. Chase and I were. And I had Kentucky among my top 5. So I think their defense is really good. I bet you I'd have to look it up, but I'll bet you that Kentucky has got about as many starts among its starters on defense of anybody in the league. So not only are they talented, they're experienced. And that's a great recipe to win in this league. Kentucky's got all that. I mean, I feel like J.J. Weaver's been there since Obama was the president. It's been a long time. Derek Jackson's been there a while too. But I think the most impressive thing today, ace corners are hard to find. And when Kentucky lost Max Hairston, I'm just like, there's no way. There's no way. And they found a way. They played a true freshman from Cincinnati. Can't remember the kid's name. Somebody can throw that in the chat, please. My apologies. But he made some plays. Big hats off to Mark Stoops. You go into Ole Miss, potential national title contender, Probably not now, but coming into the game, I think we all thought Ole Miss had a chance to get that far. I said Ole Miss coming a couple of weeks ago. I had Ole Miss as the second best team in the league behind Georgia. Had them ahead of Texas. Had them ahead of Tennessee, ahead of Alabama. That was probably overreaching in hindsight, but big win, and to do it without. I mean, I don't know that your commodities get much scarcer than an ace cornerback like Maxwell Hairston. I just don't think you can't count on one hand guys that are just game changers the way that he's been. I think to go in and win that game with him is super impressive. To do that without him was unthinkable. And hey, Mark Stoops in Kentucky did the unthinkable today. All right, we talked mostly about the defense. Big hats off to Brock Vandagriff today. 18 to 28, 243, one touchdown, no picks. I don't think Kentucky turned it over today. I'll double check that. No, they didn't. Ole Miss turned it over once. That was your only turnover in the game. They played disciplined. 3 penalties for 30 yards. Offensive line wasn't outstanding, but it was maybe better. It showed up in spurts, I thought. But you didn't really have a run game. But we knew coming in, Ole Miss was brutal to run against. You got to deal with Walter Nolan and all those guys. And so that didn't go well. But one thing we said, too, you don't want Brock Vandagriff to get confidence. And look, Brock Vandagriff's day could have been better statistically than it was. There were at least 2 drops in there that I remember. So that 18 to 28 could have, for 243, could have easily been 20 to 28 for, I don't know, 270. Pretty good day as it is, but there was a little bit there for the taking that his guys dropped. And by the way, the windows that they were throwing into were not huge for the most part. Brown got a little separation on that big play, but I thought Brock Vandagriff was excellent. We just didn't know. We knew he was talented, but we've never seen him have to be the guy in college. When he's at Georgia, he's coming into games where Georgia's up 30, 40 points. Not really a lot riding on it. Kid could have had his confidence destroyed by what South Carolina did a couple of weeks ago. Didn't happen. And it wasn't just the stat line. It wasn't just the not making mistakes. He made the biggest play of the game when all of us were going, what in the world is Mark Stoops doing? 4th and 7. You do not go for that. Your defense had gotten snaps. You punt the ball away. You get it back. You live to see another day. And I think they would have gotten it back. I don't think Ole Miss would have held it for 4 minutes the way Kentucky had played defense. But that's not what he did. I don't know. I'm doing this right after the game. So I haven't seen the press conference. I don't know if Mark Stoops saw something in a matchup. I thought they were going to get to the line of scrimmage. There were still, 12, 15 seconds left when they got up there. I thought what they were going to do was run the clock down, maybe get Kentucky offsides or get Ole Miss offsides if you could. Then maybe you get in a 4th and 2, and you got something there. I thought that's what he'd do. They snapped the ball with 8 seconds left and made I think that was his first read, was Berry and Brown. Could be wrong. But I'll be very interested to see how Mark Stoops answers that question in the press conference. Like, what was it that you saw there? Because they hadn't tested Ole Miss deep all day. We just didn't know how that would work when Brock Vandagriff had to let it go. But I guess they found something there. And Ole Miss at times did struggle in coverage. You saw some holding and grabbing from their defensive backs. I know Trey Amos may or may not have been banged up. A lot of talk about fake injuries today. Yeah, so I don't know what they saw there. Justin says, Ole Miss have Vanderbilt's kicker. Justin, that's not very nice. Hey, Matt, I'll take it, man. I didn't think Kentucky matched up well in all this game. I just didn't think they could score enough. And Ole Miss offense had been so good. I thought they'd give Kentucky some problems. Turns out that Georgia game was a harbinger. I guess whatever happened against South Carolina, Mark Stoops got their attention. And I don't think that I don't think I need to get the defense's attention. That wasn't the issue. The offense was just – they averaged under 4 yards of passing play. I think Brock Vandagriff had Gosh, I think he was sacked more times than he had completions in that Carolina game. That's a heck of a turnaround. So, big game for Kentucky. I think the defense won it, but the biggest play of the game was Brock Vandagriff hitting Barry and Brown, and then Josh Caddis for that fumble recovery in the end zone, because you don't get that, you forget all this stuff. But, yeah, gutsy call for Mark Stoops to go for it 4th and 7. Play of the year maybe in the SEC so far, and Kentucky gets a big upset. You know what? This gets fun. Don't count Kentucky out. I mean, even that game in Texas now, if Kentucky can defend the way it has, you saw the way they've slowed down Georgia and Ole Miss now. I mean, I've kind of counted them off for the Kentucky game or for the Texas game. I don't think they're going to win it, but you can't count them out against anybody. Tennessee and Knoxville, I don't think they'll win. Could they go to the 3rd or 4th quarter with that being a game? Sure. Why not? Again, that Tennessee game in a couple weeks, I'm really interested to see how they match up. Maybe Tennessee's just that good and that much better than what Georgia and Kentucky or Georgia and Ole Miss have offensively. I don't know. Again, but one lesson we can really learn from the first few weeks is these games against overmatched opponents mean almost nothing. They really don't. Ole Miss was lighting the world on fire offensively, holding teams, I think, under 2 yards a rush, and I think that's still the case after today. Kentucky couldn't run the ball very well. But, hey, all those big numbers that they put up, they mean nothing until you play somebody. And Kentucky's strength beat Ole Miss's strength today. Did it on the road. Did it on homecoming weekend. Stunned me, stunned everybody. But, hey, hats off to Kentucky. Hats off to Mark Stoops, to Brock Vandagriff, to that defense. They got it done today. And, you know, that if you didn't say, that was a great ball game. Tremendous ball game. Like, kept you on the edge of your seat the whole second half. Anyway, hats off to Kentucky. I think that'll wrap up our summary of this one. Thank you guys who watched. Thank you to those who left super chats. We'll be doing a recap tonight of Georgia, Alabama, and probably the afternoon. You know, if there's another upset, something else crazy that happens, we may do an impromptu live again. We didn't plan on this, but I think it deserved its own video. Kentucky was that good today, and you want to salute what they did, so that's what we did. But in any case, we'll be back tonight with recaps of the other games. Orbit asked, does Ole Miss realistically have a shot at the playoff? If you missed it, my take on it is I think that, goodness, if you lose to Georgia, you can't lose to anybody else. 9-3 isn't going to get them in, barring something crazy. So you can't stub. And at South Carolina, I'm telling you what, that's not the team you want to face next week. After the way Kentucky beat you today, a team that can get after your quarterback on the road, you know Columbia will be just hopping for that game. I don't know what the kickoff time. I don't know if that's a night game or an afternoon game, but it doesn't matter. And frankly, South Carolina should have won that LSU game. So that is not the matchup you want. I think if they go and get everybody but Georgia. Now, if you get Georgia, that erases. That gives you a mulligan on Kentucky, I think. Presuming Georgia is what we think Georgia is, which I would strongly bet it is. We'll find out more tonight. But, yeah, I don't think that they can lose any more other than that Georgia game. And at 10-2, it's maybe questionable at that point. Your quality wins, assuming you lose to Georgia and beat everybody else, would be your top 25 wins. LSU, if LSU's still a top 25 team. Arkansas be a nice win, but you just don't have a big resume of stuff. So I don't know. We'll see. I think 10-2 would get it, but today puts you in a situation that I don't think anybody thought we'd see Ole Miss in. Anyway, hats off to Kentucky. We'll react to the rest of the games tonight. We cover football, baseball, and basketball here year-round at Southeastern 16. Thank you to those of you who watched. Again, thank you to those who left super chats. I'm Chris Lee. You're watching Southeastern 16, presented by BetOnline.